Shocking news from the royal palace shakes the very foundation of the crown. When Camilla publicly spits on the future Queen Charlotte, the palace erupts in chaos. But what happens next will leave you speechless. An unexpected arrest, secrets of power, and a fight for the throne like never before. Stay with us till the end to uncover the truth. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. The morning air inside Ravenshell Palace carried a strange stillness. It felt like the walls were holding their breath, listening for news that no one wished to speak. The corridors were lined with portraits of kings and queens who ruled long before the present time, their painted eyes watching everything with calm patience. But there was nothing calm about what waited behind the tall carved doors of the Royal Council Hall. Royal Guard Elias Thorne stood at his post outside that chamber, dressed in the deep navy uniform of the King's Guard. Medals shining on his chest, his posture straight and disciplined. Elias had served the palace for 11 years. He knew how to read the tension in a room long before anyone spoke. Today, that tension pressed down like a heavy stone. Inside the chamber, the most senior figures in the kingdom waited for Princess Charlotte, the only child of King Aldric. The king's health had declined during the night. His physicians were doing everything they could, but grief had already settled around the palace. The entire royal staff moved with quiet steps, as if noise itself might break something fragile. Elias kept his eyes forward, but his mind stayed sharp. He knew that a succession declaration was rare. It carried the force of the crown, and it meant that something had shifted deeper than any ordinary illness. A declaration was not ceremony, it was direction. It told the world who the next ruler would be, without argument or confusion. When the tall doors opened, Princess Charlotte entered with a composed posture that surprised many who stood nearby. She wore a soft silver dress with a navy sash across her shoulder, the traditional color of the crown's chosen heir. Her face did not carry fear. It carried purpose. Behind her walked Camilla Rowan, the king's longtime consort. Her expression was sharp enough to cut the quiet atmosphere. Camilla had never accepted that the bloodline determined everything. She often whispered to others that she had shaped the king's decisions, that she deserved greater recognition. But the law was not shaped by whispers. It followed lineage. As Charlotte stepped forward, Elias lowered his chin in respectful greeting. She offered him a small nod, one that acknowledged not his rank, but his loyalty. That single gesture strengthened something inside him, something he did not expect to feel so strongly today inside the hall. Every senior advisor stood in a straight line. At the center of the long table lay a sealed letter marked with the royal crest. It contained the late Queen Eleonora's final instruction, written before her passing 2 years earlier. It declared who would follow King Aldric, regardless of personal opinions or private disagreements. The Grand Steward lifted the letter and began to read. His voice echoed with a slow and steady rhythm. The crown shall pass to Princess Charlotte, first of her name, direct heir to the royal line. She shall assume the responsibilities of succession at the request of His Majesty King Aldric, should his condition demand stable transition. A soft murmur moved through the chamber. Charlotte bowed her head respectfully. To her, this was duty. To Camilla, it was something else entirely. Elias watched from the doorway, his senses alert. He had guarded this palace during celebrations, during storms, during days of sorrow, but nothing felt like this moment. Something in the air warned him that the peace would not last long. Camilla stepped closer to Charlotte, her heels striking the marble floor with controlled force. "Do you hear what they are doing?" Camilla said in a cold whisper that carried across the room despite its low tone. "They are pushing me aside." Charlotte's voice remained calm. "This is not about who is pushed aside. This is about who the crown belongs to. The Queen placed it in the line of blood. I am only following the law she guarded." Camilla's eyes narrowed. Anger tightened her jaw. She leaned forward, her voice shaking with frustration. "You think you deserve this because of old traditions and ancient rules? You are a child pretending to hold power." Charlotte stood tall, her chin steady. "I hold responsibility, not power." Camilla's restraint crumbled. In a moment of disrespect that stunned everyone present, She leaned in and spat at Charlotte's feet. The sound echoed sharply in the silent room. Gasps filled the chamber. Elias moved before anyone else. His training guided him with precision. His boots struck the floor in a clean line of motion. He stepped between Charlotte and Camilla, his arm raised in a protective stance. "Stand back," Elias ordered with a firm voice that did not rise, but carried authority. Under royal statute, any act of aggression toward the heir demands immediate intervention. Camilla stared at him with disbelief. "You cannot speak to me in that manner. I hold rank in this palace." "You hold privilege," Elias replied. "Privilege can be removed. The heir cannot." Several advisors stepped forward, whispering urgently, but Elias did not move aside. His duty spoke louder than fear. By law, disrespect toward an heir was not handled with warnings. It demanded response. It demanded consequences. "Camilla Rowan," Elias said clearly, "you will accompany the guard to the palace judicial wing. You will answer for your actions under royal protocol." Silence froze the entire chamber, for the first time in decades. A royal guard had invoked succession law against someone of Camilla's standing. Princess Charlotte watched with steady eyes. Not triumphant, not cruel, simply aware of the weight of duty, and in that moment, Elias Thorne became the guard who refused to bow to anything but the crown. The sound of Camilla's heels striking. The marble floor echoed through the corridor as she walked between two guards. Her steps were sharp, fast, and filled with disbelief. She kept her chin lifted, as if pride alone could still hold her upright. But the hall behind her whispered a very different truth. People had paused in their duties. Servants stood frozen. Advisors exchanged silent glances. The news had begun to spread even before Camilla reached the staircase that led to the palace judicial wing. Elias Thorne followed a short distance behind. His expression steady and unreadable. He walked with the confidence of someone who understood the weight of his decision. He knew the risk. He knew the pressure. But he also knew one truth that shaped every part of his duty. The palace could not allow chaos near the line of succession. Princess Charlotte remained inside the Grand Council Hall. Surrounded by advisors who now guided her into a smaller chamber, they spoke in careful tones, explaining the next steps required if the king's health did not improve. Charlotte listened, but her thoughts stayed on the moment she had just witnessed. She never expected anyone to show aggression toward her in such a public space. She did not feel fear. She felt sadness. Sadness, that disrespect, had risen in a place that was meant to protect unity. Elias reached the lower level of the palace and approached the tall metal doors of the judicial wing. Two officers saluted him. He returned the salute with a brief nod. "Escort Camilla Rowan to holding room 3, Elias instructed. Camilla spun toward him. "You think you can do this without consequence? You are only a guard. The king will hear of this, and you will lose everything." Elias met her gaze without anger. The king placed trust in the law. The law guides every action inside this palace. You acted against the heir. The procedure is clear. Camilla opened her mouth as if to argue again, but the officers stepped forward. They guided her toward the holding room with firm but respectful movements. The door closed behind her with a final sound that carried through the hall. Elias exhaled slowly. He never enjoyed conflict, but he understood that authority meant nothing if it could not protect the innocent. Back in the chamber above, Princess Charlotte sat at a long table as the royal steward laid out several documents. "You will need to review these," he told her, his voice gentle. "These papers confirm your temporary authority in matters of state. Should the physicians require more time with His Majesty?" Charlotte took the papers with steady hands. She knew she was being prepared for a role she did not ask for, but she would not turn away from responsibility. One advisor, Lady Miriam Solace, stepped closer. "Your Highness, you showed great discipline today. You handled the situation with remarkable calm." Charlotte shook her head. "There is no pride in what happened. When someone acts out of anger, there is pain beneath it." "Perhaps," Lady Miriam replied, "but respect is not optional." Charlotte paused before answering. "I understand that. But I also understand that fear can twist anyone's judgment. I do not want this palace to become a place where fear guides the decisions." Lady Miriam gave her a thoughtful look. "Then your reign, when it comes, will bring something this kingdom has not felt in a long time." Meanwhile, Elias walked back toward the upper floors. He moved with alert steps, his training guiding him. He knew that the council would soon ask for a formal report. That report would determine what actions followed. His decision would be examined by people who cared more about structure than emotion. He welcomed that scrutiny. It meant the system was working. When he reached the top of the staircase, he found a cluster of guards waiting for him. "Elias, are the rumors true?" One of them asked. "About Camilla?" Another guard added. "Someone said she acted against the heir." Elias did not speak with drama. His voice remained calm. "It is true. She acted in a manner that violated the succession code. She is now in custody." "Dadi." A few guards exchanged surprised looks. One guard stepped forward. "Do you need support? The council may challenge your decision." Elias shook his head. "I followed the law. That is all I need." Inside the king's private medical chamber, the air was filled with the soft rhythm of machines. King Aldrich lay quietly, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow. Two physicians studied the monitors, their faces lined with concern. Princess Charlotte entered the chamber with silent steps. She approached her father's bedside and took a seat beside him. She did not speak. She simply held his hand. Her thumb brushed the old royal ring he always wore. A quiet voice spoke behind her. "Your Highness," Charlotte turned to see the chief physician. "How is he?" "We are doing everything in our power," the physician answered. "He has moments of awareness, but they come and go." Charlotte nodded. Understanding the meaning behind those words, "Please inform me the moment he wakes," she said. Double quotes, "Yes, Your Highness." As evening settled over the palace, Elias submitted his formal incident report. The council would read it by morning. The entire kingdom would learn of the situation soon. But Elias did not think about his own fate. He thought about one thing only: protecting the integrity of the crown. He knew greater storms were coming. He could feel it in the walls, in the whispered conversations, in the shifting atmosphere, but he also knew this truth. A guard's loyalty meant nothing until it was tested. And today, his loyalty had been tested in front of the entire palace. Night settled over Ravenshell Palace like a slow curtain, spreading calm across the outer gardens and towers. But inside the stone walls, the calm was only a disguise. Unease had begun to weave itself into every hallway. Servants whispered in quiet corners. Advisors exchanged tight glances. No one wanted to admit it openly, but everyone sensed the storm building. Princess Charlotte sat alone in the heir's study, a room she had rarely used before today. The shelves held old books about law, leadership, and the responsibilities of rulers. She traced her fingers across the carved armrest of the chair, listening to the deep silence that seemed to press around her. The room felt too large, too heavy with expectations. She did not fear the crown. She feared that conflict might rise from within the palace walls. Her father always reminded her that wars were not born on battlefields. They were born in quiet spaces, shaped by pride, jealousy, or distrust. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," Charlotte said. The door opened and Elias Thorne stepped inside. He saluted with calm respect. "Your Highness," he said. "The council has finished reviewing the initial details. They have asked me to keep you informed." Charlotte nodded. "Please sit, Elias. I want to understand everything clearly." Elias sat across from her, his posture straight. His uniform carried signs of a long day, but his focus had not weakened. "The council is preparing for tomorrow's hearing," he began. "Camilla will face formal questioning regarding her conduct." Charlotte lowered her eyes. "I never wanted conflict with her. I only wanted peace for the kingdom." "I understand," Elias replied. "However, your safety and your dignity are not optional. The palace must uphold its laws." Charlotte looked at him with a thoughtful expression. "Do you believe she acted out of hatred?" "No," Elias said softly. "I believe she acted out of fear. Fear can push people toward terrible choices. Charlotte took a slow breath. I hope she understands the damage she caused. Elias hesitated before speaking again. There is something more, Your Highness. The council has informed me that certain advisors are uneasy. They believe Camilla still holds influence among some members of the court. Charlotte looked up sharply. Do they think someone will defend what she did? Yes, Elias answered. Power attracts loyalty, even when it is misused. Charlotte stood and walked toward the tall window. She placed her hand on the cool glass as she looked out at the courtyard below. There must be truth in this palace, she whispered. If people begin hiding behind lies or pride, the crown will not stand firm. Elias rose as well. Truth stands when strong people protect it. That is why I will remain at your side. Charlotte turned slightly, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. You have already risked much today, Elias. The council will examine your every action. That does not concern me, Elias said. My duty is clear. In the lower chambers, Camilla sat inside holding room 3. The room had plain stone walls, a wooden chair and a small desk. She had never been inside any part of the judicial wing before. She believed people like her would never see the inside of this place. Her anger had burned away. Leaving a hollow space she did not want to face, she replayed the moment in her mind again and again. She had spoken out of fear, but she had acted out of bitterness. And that single action had shattered her control. The door opened, and a council officer stepped inside. Your hearing will take place in the morning, he said. You may rest until then. Camilla did not respond. She stared at the desk, her fingers gripping the edge tightly. She finally whispered, They think I am an enemy now. That will depend on your words tomorrow, the officer replied before he left the room. Camilla closed her eyes, hearing the officer's footsteps fade. The silence pulled at her. She wondered when everything had changed so completely. In another part of the palace, 3 senior advisors gathered in a private conference room. Lord Graylin, a stern man with a sharp voice, paced across the carpet. This situation has damaged our entire structure, he said. A guard invoking succession law against someone of Camilla's ranking is unprecedented. Lady Miriam Salas folded her hands calmly. Unprecedented does not mean incorrect. Graylin frowned. We must consider all outcomes. Camilla still holds connections among the diplomatic circles. Her removal may upset alliances. Her behavior upset the heir, Miriam countered. That carries far more weight. The third advisor, Sir Rowan Hale, leaned forward. We cannot allow this moment to divide the palace. The king's condition is already a heavy burden. Graylin stopped pacing. We must proceed carefully. The people trust the crown. One wrong step may weaken that trust. Miriam looked toward the door. Then we must guide Princess Charlotte wisely. Late that night, as the palace drifted into silence, Princess Charlotte visited her father once more. She sat beside him, holding his hand gently. Father, she whispered, I will protect your kingdom. I will honor what you built. I only hope I can lead with the same grace you showed me. Elias stood quietly outside the chamber door, guarding the last moments between a father and his daughter. He kept his eyes forward, but his mind remained alert. He sensed danger near the horizon. He sensed conflict hiding in the shadows, and he knew he would face it all. If it meant protecting the future queen, the morning light filtered softly through the tall windows of the grand chamber, casting long shadows across the polished floor. The room was filled with an unusual tension, heavier than any other day in recent memory. The palace staff moved quietly, eyes fixed on the gathering crowd. Today was the day Camilla Rowan would face the council. Today was the day a royal tradition would be tested by an unexpected challenge. Princess Charlotte arrived early, her silver dress folded neatly, her navy sash straight across her shoulder. Her face was calm, almost serene, but her eyes revealed a depth of determination. She took her place at the head of the chamber, where the council had arranged seats for the heir, advisors, and witnesses. Elias Thorne stood just inside the door, ready to act if needed. He was aware that this hearing would not be easy. Power was often defended in the shadows. Loyalty could be bought, and the truth was sometimes the hardest thing to find. The royal steward called the meeting to order. His voice echoed clearly. This hearing convenes to review the conduct of Camilla Rowan regarding her recent actions in the Grand Council Hall. Camilla entered, escorted by 2 guards. Her head was held high, but the tension around her was undeniable. She sat in the center seat, facing the council, facing the princess. The first to speak was Lord Graelyn, his voice cold but measured. Camilla Rowan, you stand accused of disrespect toward the heir, Princess Charlotte. Your actions challenged the dignity of the crown and the laws that protect it. Camilla's eyes flashed with defiance. I do not deny my actions, but I ask the council to understand the reasons behind them. I acted out of fear for the kingdom, fear that the crown might fall into hands unprepared for the burden. Princess Charlotte listened closely. She did not interrupt. She waited for the council to hear everything. Lady Miriam Solace leaned forward. Fear can never justify actions that threaten the unity of the crown. The law is clear. Disrespect toward the heir demands consequence. Camilla nodded slowly. I accept the consequences. But I also ask that the council considers what lies beneath this law. The human heart. The room fell silent. Even the guards seemed to hold their breath. Elias stepped forward at the council's request. Your Highness, members of the council, my duty is to protect the crown and those who serve it. When Camilla acted, she violated the trust placed in all who serve this palace. That trust must be upheld. A murmur spread through the chamber. Camilla's gaze met Elias's for a brief moment. Neither showed fear. The hearing continued with witnesses called to speak, including royal servants and advisors who had observed the events leading to the incident. Each described Camilla's growing frustration and her opposition to the succession plan. Princess Charlotte rose. Her voice was steady and clear. I stand before you not as a symbol or a prize, but as a servant of this kingdom. My place is determined by law, yes, but my heart is with the people I am sworn to protect. Camilla's actions hurt me, but they also reveal a fear I understand. Fear of change, fear of the unknown. She paused, looking around the room. The crown is more than a title. It is a promise to lead with justice, kindness, and strength. I ask the council to consider not only the law, but the future we must build together. Lord Graelyn cleared his throat. The council will now deliberate, as the chamber emptied. Elias walked alongside Princess Charlotte. You handled that well, he said quietly. Charlotte shook her head. It is not victory. It is a beginning. The grand chamber sat in tense silence as the council members returned to their seats. The weight of their decision hung heavily in the air. Princess Charlotte remained calm, but inside she felt a storm of uncertainty. She had spoken her truth. She had stood for the crown's honor and the future of the kingdom. Now the council held her fate and the fate of Camilla in their hands. Lord Graelyn rose slowly, his expression unreadable. After careful consideration of all testimony, the council has reached a decision. Every eye in the room fixed on him. Camilla. Rowan's conduct is found to have violated the code of royal decorum and succession law. The council agrees that her actions cannot be overlooked, for the protection of the crown must be absolute. A hush fell over the chamber. However, Lord Graelyn continued. The council also recognizes the complexities behind this incident. Fear and uncertainty have touched many hearts in the palace. Therefore, the punishment shall reflect both justice and mercy. Camilla sat upright, her eyes steady despite the gravity of the moment. Camilla Rowan is hereby removed from all court privileges and duties. She shall reside under supervised house arrest within the palace grounds until further notice. For Camilla, it was both a punishment and a quiet exile. Princess Charlotte nodded slowly, understanding the delicate balance the council had chosen. Elias watched closely. His heart was steady, but he felt the weight of what had just been decided. The palace was fragile now, more so than ever. As the chamber emptied, murmurs spread quickly through the palace halls. Some praised the council's fairness. Others whispered of unrest and hidden agendas. Charlotte returned to her chambers, where Elias awaited. Your Highness, Elias said, this verdict will not end the tensions in the palace. she sighed. I know, but it is a step toward peace. Outside, dark clouds gathered over Ravenshell Palace. The distant rumble of thunder seemed to echo the turmoil inside the stone walls. In the quiet of the evening, Camilla sat alone in her new quarters, her thoughts heavy but clear. She had lost her privileges, yes, but she had also been heard. She picked up a small, worn letter, the late Queen Eleonora's handwritten note that had been read aloud days ago. The words reminded her that the crown's strength came from more than power. It came from truth, from courage, and from heart. Meanwhile, Princess Charlotte prepared for the difficult days ahead. The king's condition remained uncertain. Her new responsibilities were growing every hour Elias approached. Her one morning, as she studied maps and documents, "Your Highness," she said, "there are reports of unrest among some palace staff. Fear is spreading." Charlotte looked up, her eyes sharp. "We must face this storm with clear minds and steady hearts," she said. "I will not allow fear to divide us." Elias nodded. "You have already shown great strength." Charlotte smiled faintly. "Strength is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite fear." As night fell again, Ravenshell Palace felt the weight of coming change. The future queen and her loyal guard stood together, ready to face whatever lay ahead. They understood that the path of leadership was never easy. It was filled with trials, sacrifices, and moments of doubt. But they also understood one truth. A crown is not just a symbol. It is a promise to protect, to serve, and to endure. The first light of dawn slipped softly through the stained glass windows of Ravenshell Palace. The sky was painted in shades of gold and lavender, signaling a new beginning. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was quiet but charged with hope. The storm that had darkened the halls was slowly fading, replaced by a fragile peace. Princess Charlotte stood on the balcony overlooking the gardens. Her silver dress caught the morning light as she held the late Queen Eleonora's sealed letter in her hands. The letter felt like a bridge between the past and the future, a reminder of the promise she was now entrusted to keep. Behind her, Elias Thorne approached quietly, his steps measured and calm. He paused beside her and looked out over the palace grounds. "Your Highness," he said softly, "the kingdom waits for your guidance. You carry more than a crown. You carry the hopes of every soul within these walls." Charlotte turned to him, her eyes steady and determined. "I will not fail them," she said. "This crown is not mine to hold alone. It belongs to all who believe in the strength of truth and kindness." Elias nodded. "You have already proven your strength." As the palace began to stir with activity, Charlotte prepared to address her people. Today was not just about power or title. It was about healing a kingdom that had faced uncertainty and division. Inside the Great Hall, the royal advisors gathered to plan the coming days. They spoke of the king's health, of the need to maintain order, and of the importance of unity. Lady Miriam Solis approached Charlotte with a gentle smile. "You have carried this burden with grace, Your Highness. The council stands ready to support you." Charlotte clasped her hands together. "We will need everyone's strength. The road ahead will demand courage from us all." Outside, Camilla remained under house arrest. She walked the small garden path with quiet contemplation. Though removed from the center of power, she found a new understanding of what the crown truly meant. She carried no bitterness now. Instead, she carried a hope that the future queen would lead with fairness. One afternoon, Charlotte visited Camilla. The guards allowed the meeting under strict supervision. Charlotte spoke gently. "Camilla, this kingdom needs healing. Your voice matters, even if your place has changed." Camilla nodded slowly. "I understand. I acted in fear, but I want to serve the crown in whatever way I can." Their eyes met, a silent agreement passing between them. Days passed, and King Aldrich's condition began to show signs of improvement. His strength returned slowly but steadily. The palace breathed easier. Princess Charlotte took on more duties. She met with diplomats, advisors, and common folk alike. Her leadership style was firm but kind. She listened before she spoke and acted with care. Elias remained by her side, ever watchful, ever loyal. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Charlotte stood once more on her balcony. The stars began to appear, tiny lights against the darkening sky. She whispered a quiet promise to the night. "I will be the queen this kingdom needs. I will protect its heart and honor its past." Elias stood beside her, a silent guardian. The future was uncertain, but they faced it together. Ravenshell Palace had survived the storm. It was stronger because of the trials it faced. The crown no longer belonged to one person alone. It belonged to the people, to the truth, and to the hope that tomorrow would be better. Princess Charlotte's reign had begun not with celebration or fanfare, but with courage and the quiet strength of a guard who refused to bow.